And we're back with part 3 of the Smash Wii U Top 5 series. So far we've had my top 5 loved and hated characters and stages, so this time we're looking at final smashes. I now have every DLC character, so all of them are legible for being in this list. When I did the top 5 smashes in Brawl video, people said I put too much emphasis on how the smash looks and not enough on how effective they are, and looking back I can see where they're coming from, so on this occasion I will be taking 4 things into consideration: how easy it is to hit your opponent, the knockback it gives, the damage it causes, and of course how awesome it looks, though I'm not actually scoring them or anything. I struggled more with this than any top 5 I've done, so maybe take this with a pinch of salt, and remember, this is just my opinion, so let's get going. Palutena's Black Hole Laser. It was a tough choice between 2 smashes for 5th place, but I ended up going for Palutena's Black Hole Laser. The damage is okay, dealing 40%, and it has some decent knockback, but its range is amazing. While the black hole traps enemies caught in it so they take the full effect of the smash, the laser covers pretty much the entire stage, so anyone in line with the black hole can still take damage and be launched off, which can be particularly helpful in 8-player smashes. Sure, in larger stages it may not KO them, but that's the same with pretty much every final smash. Even so, being able to cover a pretty large area, the damage it causes should be enough to allow you to then fairly easily smack them into oblivion. Pac-Man's Super Pac-Man. This poor guy really doesn't have a lot going for him. The final smash is good on paper, becoming the giant 2D Pac-Man from the original classic games, roaming around the stage eating your opponents, but that's where the fun times end. Eating them only causes 15% damage, and the knockback is fairly poor as well. Once you've eaten them and they become the floating pair of eyes, you can't eat them again until they return to normal, so you either have to go after someone else or keep going after the same person and hope you'll KO them before it ends. He could do with moving a tad faster, but a damage and knockback increase are much more needed. Ryu's Shin Shoryuken. Ryu is the first character ever to have 2 final smashes, and while his Shinku Hadouken is decent, I much prefer his Shin Shoryuken. It can be a tad difficult to pull off as you have to be very close to your opponent, but if you do, it's so worth it. The damage is okay at around 40%, but the vertical knockback more than makes up for it. KOs can be achieved fairly easy with this one, and it looks pretty sweet, but it's the required close range that stops it from being further up the list. If you are too far away and end up doing the Shinku Hadouken, it'll do a decent enough job, but I never find it to be as effective or as awesome as Shin Shoryuken. Rob's Super Diffusion Beam. I hated Rob's Diffusion Beam in Brawl, and in the Brawl Final Smashes video I said the Diffusion Beam would have been much better if it was more like Cyclops' Optic Rage from the X-Men Legends games. It looks like I got my wish, and it is better than it was in Brawl, but it still leaves a lot to be desired. It doesn't do much damage, the knockback isn't very good, and the range is rather poor. At least opponents can get caught in it, so they will suffer the full effect, and the laser can be angled, albeit slightly, to catch someone nearby, but it'll need a hell of a lot more than that to save it. Ness and Lucas's PK Starstorm. PK Starstorm just missed out on being in the top 5 last time due to the random way the stars fell, but in Smash 4 it's much more effective due to being a concentrated barrage which can be angled, making it more like Lucario's Aura Storm from Brawl. The meteors do good damage, but being able to change the angle allows you to push your opponents off the stage while racking up the damage. It's also quite easy to catch multiple enemies in the stream and KO them to boost your score. It's much better having control over the Starstorm rather than leaving it up to luck, so they made a nice final smash amazing. Plus it looks pretty. Rosalina and Luma's Power Star. My main problem with this one is that it's too easy to avoid altogether, because not only is the star stationary, but the stars that shoot off it don't have much range. Sure, some can come out a fair way, and if someone hits the main star they get trapped, but the chances of that happening are too small to be worthwhile. Eventually the main star explodes and the knockback is good, but it doesn't have much range, and seeing as most enemies will have moved away from it by the time it explodes, they won't get hit anyway. Apparently the final smash can cause 250% damage, but I've never seen that happen. If it had more range, like by having several smaller stars dotted around the stage that explode, it could have been good, but having one fairly easily avoided large star works against it. Samus's Zero Laser. It was in the top 5 before, I still love Zero Laser, and it's even better than it was in Brawl. It still looks amazing, can do some insane damage, and not only is the knockback decent, but it pushes the poor sods coursing it back a fair way before then launching them even further. Just like Rob's Super Diffusion Beam, the laser can be angled as it's being fired, but as Zero Laser has far more range than Super Diffusion Beam, your foes might be able to get away on some of the larger stages, but for the most part, they're going to get a face full of laser, and there's not a lot they can do about it. Unless they just stand behind her. Plus, Samus no longer turns into Zero Suit Samus, which wasn't a huge biggie for me in Brawl, but I'm glad it no longer happens. Here's hoping Samus can use the Zero Laser in the next Metroid game. Mr. Game & Watch's Octopus. I was sure this one got nerfed since Brawl, and it turns out it has been. The tentacles extending to damage and knock back your opponents is all well and good, but the damage they cause isn't as high as it was in Brawl, and the knockback isn't that great either. Also, it moves really slowly, so it's pretty easy to get away from. It may be doing okay in the footage, but I have them on a low level just to make capturing footage easier, and as a result, they aren't exactly trying to get away. Jumping around the place helps prevent your opponents just going to a high place and staying there, but getting between platforms can be a pain in the arse, especially as once you've jumped, you can't jump again, so should you find there's nothing to land on, there's only one way to go. Down. You may already know who's at number 1, but first, here are some honourable mentions. Ike's Great Aether. It's awesome and I love it. It does major damage, has decent knockback and looks amazing. The knockback the final explosion gives is vertical, and once they've been sent flying up, there's a good chance they won't be coming back down, especially if there happens to be a high platform. If the stage has a high blast line, they may not go high enough to KO, but with the high amount of damage it causes and Ike's attacks having good knockback themselves, it won't be too difficult to get in the final smack to finish the job. While Robin, Greninja and a few others have similar final smashes, there's just something about Great Aether that makes it actually seem painful, so I almost feel sorry for the poor git caught in it. Almost. Before getting into the number 1 spot, here are some dishonourable mentions. Before I announce the final smash I put at number 1, I want you to promise me something, that you'll listen to the reasons why I put them there before you scroll down to the comments and yell at me. If afterwards you still want to yell at me, then fair enough, go for it. Just promise me that you'll listen to my reasons first, okay? Here goes. Marth's and Lucina's critical hit. I did have this in my loved top 5 as it does have great damage and even better knockback, but that's all for naught if it's easy to dodge. When I started recording the footage, more attempts were missed than hits due to the opponents dodging or simply moving out the way, and as I mentioned before, I have them on a low level, so it's not like they were using any advanced techniques. I went into training to try it for myself and it's ridiculously easy to avoid. You can move normally when Marth lifts his sword, so you can easily perform a dodge roll during that time and avoid getting hit altogether. I tried this with Lucina as she has the exact same final smash and it had the exact same problem. The other hated final smashes in this list might not be great for scoring KOs or are fairly easy to avoid, but they'll at least do a little bit of damage, whereas critical hits can too easily be made completely useless. If you want to yell at me because if you do hit them, it's an almost guaranteed KO, so it could be considered high risk, high reward, then go ahead, I don't give a flying pancake. With how easy it is for critical hit to be avoided, it's really not worth it. So there we have it. Let me know what you thought of my top 5 loved and hated final smashes, as well as what yours are. Check the description for another link to my countdowns playlist, as well as a link to my Twitter page where you can get up-to-date information on what's going on and other random crap I decide to tweet. There's more to come in the Smash Wii U Top 5 series, so until then, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.